All right, this is a press briefing between U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft and the FBI Director Robert Mueller, and it's dated September 20th, 2001.
Thank you, General. I appreciate very much your hospitality and the fact that you've made this particular tragedy a matter of your personal attention. Uh, at the outset, let me say how much I am grateful for the presence of John Gillis. John Gillis is a member of the Justice Department's team, and he's in charge of victim services. I wanted him to be with me to see today the crash site so that he could have the kind of sensitivity in dealing with victims of this great tragedy. A veteran of well over 20 years of specific law enforcement as a police officer, he's also had tragedy touch his family. His daughter was brutally murdered by gang members. He understands these kinds of circumstances, and I'm glad that he's with me. Mary Beth Buchanan is the new U.S. Attorney, the spokesperson for the justice system of the United States of America in this part of the world, and delighted that she could be with us today. Jack Shea is the SAC, the special agent in charge of the FBI. Thank you for your briefing, which was comprehensive, and frankly, it's a real credit to the individuals who have been working here. I'm grateful. I had the chance of meeting with Major Zapinka of the Pennsylvania State Police. He and those individuals with him have been serving admirably.
Right about this time, it was about 2 or 3 weeks down this road after the attacks, was when the walls came down, so to speak, the walls between the local, the state, and federal government. In that, the walls were there meant to protect us, right? Meant to protect or the suspect. In other words, if somebody gets arrested by, say, local police, and this guy has a record with a federal crime before that. Well, this guy wouldn't be protected, so to speak, under the current laws that we have now because the walls are gone. So, in other words, if the feds wanted information on this guy and he's in state custody, there would be a lot of protocols involved, right? Paperwork to share that information with the federal government. It's no longer really the case anymore. Everybody now is on almost like on the same level. Yeah, sure, agencies exist and there are different protocols. But it was around this same time that, as I think it was Pope for Black or Dick Cheney, they said that the walls have to be removed, so to speak, in order for us to react quickly in the sharing of information that could have stopped the attacks. However, like I said, the walls were there for a reason. Okay. Now, there's a plus and a minus to this. Yes, information is faster shared, but it's also now that all the agencies are working in conjunction with one another. So in the future, if you want to play, crazy conspiracy, in that soon there won't be a federal, there won't be a state and federal local government. It'll just be one system of government, one system of justice. There won't be a state, a local, or federal. The executive and legislative branches will no longer exist. And if you look at some of these people from the Democratic Party and from the Republican Party, and I'm talking about these nuances, these new faces, they want to do away with the old establishment line of thinking, especially this one off branch shoot. Because, like I said, there's two branches within the Republican Party, right? Where this younger crowd wants to say, "Hey, listen, we need to change the government because the government is evil and the way it is functioning. It's not for the people." Well, when they talk about for the people, they talk about specific core people, right? based on race, based on religion, based on politics, everything. This is the reason why the Utah Data Center exists, where all your emails and phone calls are stored, right? All information. What is it there for? In the future, to see who votes a certain way, who thinks a certain way, who is a certain look. Because that is coming, if you haven't seen it already. But no, I'm getting off track here. But that's what we saw here in the first 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11. We started seeing the erosion, the new world that has come from 9/11. This is the reason why maybe I took such a vested interest in 9/11, was that unlike any human incident besides the Ice Age, right, where the entire world changed fundamentally, psychologically. It wasn't like that with World War II. It was almost that way. It wasn't like that with the assassination of JFK. It was a reminder of who's in power. 9/11 changed everything.
And I'm delighted that his service to Pennsylvania and to Governor Ridge is so thorough. General Fisher, thank you. I spent 8 years as a state attorney general, and I know that in times like these, the complete focus and attention of an attorney general can mean a lot, and I'm grateful to you. It is impossible to stand in a field in Pennsylvania at the site of heroic devotion and activity without thinking of the words of Abraham Lincoln, who spoke 140 years ago at Gettysburg. He put it this way: the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. In the midst of this tragedy is a testimony of the American spirit, of individuals who bravely and courageously were willing to endure additional risks and pay an ultimate price so that others would be more secure. That's the heroic tradition of law enforcement and public service in the United States of America, and I simply cannot pass at this site without reflecting on the fact that it became a part of the conduct and life of so many individuals who were heroic at this site. And it should be a testimony and inspiration to every American everywhere to understand that public safety is everybody's business, and it's our opportunity to do those things that preserve our liberty and the integrity of what it means to enjoy the freedoms we call America.
You know, ironically, that he talks about freedoms for America. Meanwhile, it wasn't the terrorists who took away certain civil liberties or were invasive to our civil liberties. It was just a precursor. It was the federal government that did that with the help of the intelligence services, foreign and domestic. And all you have to do is ask yourself, who benefited from 9/11, right? Well, I would say that the benefit went to not just the terrorists, but to the United States, to Saudi Arabia, and to Israel. Why? Look at the countries we invaded. Afghanistan, which is understandable. It's where the Al Qaeda training bases were. But for 20 years, we fought a useless war. It was the longest useless war in U.S. history. When I say useless, it's not to demean the people, soldiers that were killed there. Their lives aren't cheap. But to the American government, they're expendable. Sorry, that's just the truth. But the Taliban took over the country. And right now, the country, the United States government, is currently have basically handed the Taliban hundreds of millions of dollars in weapons and ensured that they become a centralized local government, which is also allowing for Al Qaeda to secretly exist in the background and service in their government. I'm pretty sure the United States are aware of this, but don't care. Secondly, Syria. Need I remind you, a story I posted today. In September of this year, we're going to invite Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, an al-Qaeda affiliate, named Haria Tahrir Shah, who's a terrorist. Plain and simple. He's coming to New York in September. There's your federal government. We are backing terrorist regimes. Israel's another country that benefited from 9/11. We invaded countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and Syria. Okay? Who's the enemies to Israel politically? Iran. Iran's allies are who? Lebanon, Syria. Who are the enemies to Saudi Arabia religiously? Iran, Lebanon, Syria. See where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen?
Investigation. Bob?
I only at the outset can acknowledge or state that every FBI agent, every FBI employee acknowledges, respects, and has the utmost admiration for the heroic efforts of the passengers on Flight 93. And I think our admiration, our respect for those passengers is shared by just about everybody in the country. The FBI has the initial jurisdiction for investigating incidents such as this, but we are but one of so many law enforcement agencies who come together at times like this and other such times and work together hand in hand to bring those responsible to justice. And it is thus here. And I want to spend just a moment to talk about the support that the Bureau, ATF, Red Cross have provided to this effort here. In particular, I want to mention the agents tell me that there's been a huge outpouring of support from the communities here in Somerset County and throughout Pennsylvania. And for that support, we thank you from the depth of our hearts. Others have helped and should be acknowledged. Pennsylvania State Police, Colonel Hicks, Major Sapinka, and the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency were here moments after this happened and have worked hand in hand with the FBI, ATF, and the other federal agencies. I want to just mention in conclusion the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. To walk the line and see the agents you expect in a circumstance like this. It's a crime scene, and you expect agents to be sifting through the rubble in order to determine whether there's evidence there that can be used in a prosecution down the road in order to bring these individuals to justice. But
Interestingly enough, just to stop them there for a little bit, is that the FBI did find more evidence at the Shanksville crash site than any other. Interestingly enough, they found a business card there. And not many people know this, but it's very important. It was a business card belonging to an individual named Assam Al-Jara. Assam Al-Jara. Now, that sounds familiar. Who's that? Well, he's the uncle of the alleged pilot hijacker of Flight 93 that crashed in Shanksville, Ziad Al-Jara. Now, I do have a conspiracy that I don't have proof. It's working on it, and I'm working on it with Nelson Martins, DJ Thermal Detonator, regarding whether Ziad Jar was on the plane or not. Now, you may think, well, the FBI, 9/11 Commission say there were 4 hijackers. Well, because of people like Alex Jones and Jason Burmis and Christopher Bolin and Rebecca Roth and all these other fake frauds, Jim Fetzer, they all said that all the hijackers, there was no plane crash in Shanksville, negating a conspiracy that could be even much bigger. Now, hear me out. The business card belonged to Assam Al-Jara, the uncle of Ziad Jarrah. Assam Al-Jara was an informant for Libyan, German, and Israeli intelligence. That's right. That's what I said. He was also involved with the Abu Nidal organization. Although he continually denies it, there's a history behind there. And German BFE basically have a record on. So it's no small secret. Here's a man with money, basically. His family always said that he was basically, very always away from home and, taking trips here and there. And he thinks, because he has a legitimate business, he could get away with this stuff. But that's not the only thing. On the back of that business card was the address of the following: 54 Marion Straub. Now, if you're not familiar with that, 54 Marion Straub is where the Hamburg cell existed, where they first formed in Hamburg, Germany. People who lived in that apartment were Muhammad Atta, Marwan al Shehi, Ramzi bin al Shib, and who used to go to this apartment? Al Qaeda gunrunners from Syria and Germany named Mohammed Haydar Zamar and Marmoon Darkanzali, who the CIA were trying to recruit for years and were known to the German BFE for years. So they were believed to be grooming these three men, and Ziad Jarrah would also visit once in a while, but he had his own apartment. In fact, he was renting a room from women. Now, the conspiracy is this, is that we don't think Ziad Jarrah was on that plane. We think he got to the airport. Sure enough, he got the ticket stamped, but that was it. We think somehow he got off the plane. Now, I can't say this with any conviction because his voice is heard on the plane. And that was backed by individuals who took flight training with him in Florida at the Florida Flight Training School, the FTC or something like that, that heard his voice. So, yeah, that's his voice. That's him. But that doesn't mean he was physically in the cockpit. I don't know whether it's possible for radio transmissions to basically transmit from the ground to the air. I'm not familiar with this. And anybody who is, please comment below. But there were 6 phone calls. There were more phone calls on this flight than any other. 4 by passengers, 2 by flight attendants. That basically said they only saw 3 hijackers. Now, could it be that the muscle hijackers, took over the plane and Ziad Jarrah got up and went to the cockpit? I don't think that's likely. How would they get in the cockpit without getting to the cockpit key and by killing or injuring the flight attendant and people looking? They would have to open the door, and people are going to look because people are in first class. And like I said, all this is speculation. I don't have evidence for this. But Ziad Jarrah, the cockpit voice recorder, is the only cockpit voice recorder that survives, and it's huge. And at no point do we hear Ziad Jarrah, who's allegedly flying the plane, on it. His name is never mentioned, and the transcripts do exist. They're online. The voice recording was heard by the families, but Ziad Jarrah's name was never heard. The only name you heard was Saeed, and there was a Saeed on board. His name was Saeed Al-Ghamdi. And that's what I think. Now, also, there was another informant within the Al-Jarrah clan, Ali Al-Jarrah, and he was an Israeli intelligence asset infiltrating Hezbollah for over 25 years. He had a brother, Ali Al-Jarrah's brother, Joseph Al-Jarrah, who helped him along for 10 years. So you would think Ziad Jarrah, who's going to come into the biggest Al-Qaeda operation in the world, Al-Qaeda, which scrutinizes and uses strict security protocols in recruitment, couldn't find out about his family, who had connections with intelligence. Little bit too close to home for me. Now, I couldn't tell you whether Ziad Jarrah was killed on that plane or not, because nobody's DNA profile regarding terrorists was ever verified, because the FBI couldn't get any DNA trans samples from any of the victims' families. And according to some of the families, they were never even asked. Take that for what you will. But it's funny because the people like Alex Jones and Christopher Boylan that love to blame Israel for 9/11 may want to believe that, yeah, hey, these planes were hijacked, but who were the profiles of these hijackers? People really died on these planes. Oh, the phone calls couldn't work, or the planes couldn't have been flown. They weren't training to be pilots. And yes, cell phones can work. But if you don't have hijackers, and if you don't have actual planes, no one's going to be talking about what's on the phone lines. No one's going to be talking about the phone calls. No one's going to be investigating the profiles of these hijackers, and for fucking good reason. It's no wonder the 9/11 shoot movement was ruined when it first started. And take a look at who benefited from that and who's still around making dough from his oafish, very loyal and ignorant followers. Alex Jones is number one.
See the Red Cross, the many volunteers of the Red Cross, to see the volunteers from the Salvation Army and all the others from the community who were here at this site is a testimony, is a statement as to how, not only at this site, but across the country, all persons are coming together. All persons who believe that this is an abhorrent act are coming together to try to bring these individuals to justice, and all of us together will succeed in bringing the individuals responsible for this to justice. Now, I think probably Attorney General and I would be happy to entertain some questions.
Can you give us the status on the black box that we found?
We have, yes, I'd be happy to. There were 2 recorders found at the Pentagon site, the flight data recorder and the voice recorder, and unfortunately we're unable to obtain anything off the voice recorder because it was so badly burned in that crash. We recovered the flight data recorder here as well as the voice recorder, and we and the NTSB are in the process of transcribing and, in certain cases, translating the dialogue, what little dialogue there is on that voice recorder. I will say we do not have the voice recorders from the World Trade Center or the flight data recorders. Anybody else?
Can you tell us how many
Yes, sir.
material witnesses have been arrested at this point, and was the gentleman in the Chicago area yesterday one of them?
There have been a number of material witness warrants issued, and I cannot give you the specific number.
If translations are required off the cockpit voice recorder, what do you assume then that hijackers were on that?
I can't go into the details anymore. But we are, I will tell you that we are, it will take some time because we are analyzing very carefully what is heard on that voice data recorder. Yes, ma'am. I know I said at the outset that I had a high level of confidence on the identities of the hijackers. We have several hijackers.
You know, I'm interested because it was used in a court of law. It's already public, right? The transcript for Flight 93 from the cockpit voice recorder is public, but not the voice. Now, why is this? Hear me out. Wee, wee, wee. All right? Conspiracy time. Wee, wee, wee. Okay? The reason why I think it's not public is for the simple fact that we're not going to hear Ziad Jarrah's voice. We sort of know what he sounds like. There are videos out there of him speaking, very rare, but they're out there. We got the voice of him, you know, from the plane. That's why I think the voice recording isn't public. If there's any lawyer, anybody here knows a lawyer that can file a Freedom of Information request for the cockpit voice recording, I would love to speak to that person on how to do this. If anybody has ideas, comment below. Could be wrong. It could be on that voice recording.
Identities were those of the names on the manifests. We have several others that are still in question. So it's the investigation is ongoing, and I am not certain as to several of the others.
Can you tell me, or do you know the information on that cockpit voice recorder from this airline, Flight 93, does it support what a number of the cellular phone calls from passengers have indicated about them, the passengers on board the plane?
It would be premature to discuss what's on that until the analysis is done.
We have time for one more question.
Do you agree with General Nero that the passengers on Flight 93 did
I think both of us here, and both the Attorney General and I, and the Attorney General of Pennsylvania have indicated we believe those passengers on this jet were absolute heroes, and their actions during this flight were heroic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that's basically it, right? So, all right, for those who are watching this, the very few people who are watching this anyway, if you never heard of that Ziad Jarrah theory that I have, comment below. What do you think about it? Is it off the wall? Am I losing it? Or is there some rationale behind it? Do you think it's plausible? I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear an outsider's perspective. Because everybody likes to think they're right all the time. I could be dead wrong about this, and would like to hear your thoughts on it. So there's some interest in 9/11 again, it seems, and we have the conservatives to thank this, but for the wrong reasons. They're talking about World Trade Center 7 and the crackpot theories about drone airliners and shit like this, and that's not what I want to see dominate the spectrum. I want to finally get somebody serious enough, maybe some senator, maybe Ron Johnson, if he's not too imbued, or Kurt Weldon, to basically talk about pre-intelligence. It's about fucking time. We got names, we got figures. We talk about a lack of intelligence, a lack of sharing information, a lack of information that wasn't, overwhelming information that wasn't acted on. Why, right? And what about the information that we haven't made public? The Ahmed El-Hada House, the Gerald Shea Memorandum, Operation Encore, the Canestrell document. We got a lot to talk about, and nobody wants to talk about it. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching the video. See you in the next one. Take care, everybody.